Video games walk a delicate balance between wish fulfillment and simulation. Some games strive to be closer to one than the other, with games like Project Cars attempting to simulate driving to a near-realistic standard, and games like Burnout Paradise, which are nowhere near realistic, but which allow you to do some things that are pretty spectacular. Neither type of game is inherently better or even more fun, as while games which lean toward the wish fulfillment end of the spectrum allow you to easily pull off amazing feats, there is a danger of those games feeling like they're on autopilot and showing the player those feats, rather than allowing the player to perform them. Simulation games might make it more difficult to perform actions, but when executed well, the result is that the player feels more like they did something amazing, with a level of control over the player character's actions that is satisfying in a much deeper way. On my last Marc the Cyborg Reloads, I looked at The Force Unleashed, and while I think that game is incredible, absolutely worth your time, and had a force power simulation system which is to this day second to none, the lightsaber combat is definitely closer to being tap X to Jedi than a simulation of galaxy far far away swordsmanship. There is, however, a yang to Force Unleashed yin, and while it's been available on PC, Nintendo GameCube, and the original Xbox for close to 2 decades, it's recently been re-released for the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. The game in question is the third game in the Dark Forces series, Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast. Jedi Outcast was developed by Raven Software in 2002, and was one of the original instances of LucasArts outsourcing a game to an external studio. Later collaborations of this nature would have Bioware and Obsidian giving us the 2 Knights of the Old Republic games, and Pandemic giving us the original Battlefront games. Raven is a great studio, with Jedi Outcast preceding the fan-favorite Singularity, their crack at the Wolfenstein franchise, and the best ever example of a game being better than the movie it's based on, X-Men Origins Wolverine. In recent years, Raven has been primarily working in a support capacity on the Call of Duty franchise, and there is a bit of industry drama surrounding them as of late. They were allegedly leading development on next year's Call of Duty campaign, but have since been replaced by Treyarch, who haven't made a good Call of Duty campaign since Black Ops 2. At least the new Modern Warfare is looking good. Luckily, Raven was allowed to finish Jedi Outcast, as from a story standpoint, Jedi Outcast is definitely high tier. To set the proper context, we'll have to wind back a bit to the original Dark Forces game. Series protagonist Kyle Katarn was a stormtrooper who became a mercenary, and in the old EU, he and his pilot Jan Ors were responsible for sealing the plans to the original Death Star. Rogue One has since nullified this. In the second game, Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, Kyle discovers his latent force abilities, allowing him to fight and defeat both the Dark Jedi Jarek and the inherent comedy of mid-90s live-action video game cutscenes.
In time, Ron. First, I need something from you.
Jedi Knight II Jedi Outcast is technically Dark Forces 3, because apparently LucasArts wanted to aggravate my obsessive-compulsive tendencies, so we're going to try to not think too hard about that. What we will think about is how cool the story is, even in its relative simplicity when compared to the sprawling tales of Knights of the Old Republic or the cinematic ambition of The Force Unleashed. The game begins with a rather long and difficult series of levels in which you're back to being ordinary mercenary Kyle Katarn. There is no lightsaber, no force powers, just a turncoat stormtrooper, your trusty pilot Jan, this time voiced by Vanessa Marshall, who went on to voice trusty pilot Hera on Rebels, and some complex first-person shooter levels. Jedi Outcast takes place several years after Return of the Jedi. You and Jan infiltrate an Imperial remnant base, free some prisoners, and eventually confront a new Dark Jedi, a former pupil of Luke Skywalker, who also appears to be an anthropomorphic velociraptor named Dasan. Dasan makes short work of Kyle in your first unbeatable boss battle with him, which ends very poorly and forces Kyle to reconnect with the Force, retrieve his lightsaber from Luke, and get revenge against Dasan. I can't understate how amazing it was to see Luke Skywalker in the Jedi Temple on Yavin 4. I remember being moved by it when I originally played it 17 years ago, but within the context of the direction they took Luke's character in the new canon, seeing Luke as a wise Jedi Master running a thriving Jedi Academy nearly brought a tear to my eye. Late in the game, there's even a fantastic moment in which you join forces with Luke and fight some Dark Jedi alongside him. It is the best brand of fan service. Luke puts you through a series of Jedi trials which are required in order to recover your lightsaber, and it's at this point that Jedi Outcast shifts into being both a first-person shooter and a third-person Jedi action game. The game does a decent job of presenting both gameplay styles, but it's pretty clear to call the third-person lightsaber combat the stronger aspect of the game. The shooting is fine, but all the weapons feel as if they lack precision, like your reticle is a suggestion as to where your shots may land rather than something that you can rely upon with certainty. That doesn't mean that once you have the lightsaber, you can give up the guns entirely, though, as there are several enemies and situations which are handled better with a good blaster at your side than with an elegant weapon from a more civilized time.
Pokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Later on in the game, the balance between these styles comes into its own, but Raven made the odd choice of making the Nar Shaddaa sequence immediately follow the acquisition of the lightsaber. There's a great lightsaber battle in a bar at the beginning, but for the next few hours of the game, you're dealing with snipers over long sight lines and mercenaries dropping thermal detonators on you from blind elevated platforms. This makes your guns far more useful than your new lightsaber. Swapping between playing as a mercenary and as a Jedi on the fly is necessary for success, but when it does come time to spark your lightsaber and engage in a melee, Jedi Outcast goes from being a competent first-person shooter to what is argued to this day as the best lightsaber combat simulator ever. I say simulator because the way combat is handled in Jedi Outcast, you aren't going to be doing a lot of fancy, highly choreographed looking flares the way Starkiller does in Force Unleashed. Instead, you're given a much greater degree of control over a lightsaber which does far more damage. For the purpose of this video, I turned on realistic lightsaber combat mode, which allows both the blade of the saber to do damage on contact, regardless of whether or not the saber is being swung, and also allows for some limited amputations to occur, which is something I'm a bit of an expert on. Ew. At this time, I don't know if this mode has been made available in the new console ports, but I didn't apply it as a mod, it was simply a command console cheat code, so it is in the source code of the game, and if it's not in the new version, it's likely due to modern Star Wars hating my people. We're 4 movies into Disney Star Wars and a lightsaber hasn't hacked off a single limb.
But everyone should just remember, this is a film about space wizards intended for children. We're talking about a movie about space wizards intended for children. Because one more time, this is a movie about space wizards intended for children.
I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
The lightsaber swings are controlled in tandem with a directional movement, allowing you to choose which type of attacks you initiate. Winning the lightsaber duels, unlike the Force Unleashed, isn't a matter of landing dozens of hits until an enemy health bar is depleted. It's a matter of landing one hit, which will kill most enemies in the game. As the story continues and the enemies get more difficult, the lightsaber-wielding enemies will appear to take more hits, but the feeling of tension remains. You feel like the weapons in both you and your opponent's hands are deadly and need to be wielded with precision and skill. There are some fancy moves you can pull off, particularly when combining a strike with a force jump, which results in a satisfying acrobatic flip, or a 360-degree strike, which is handy for clearing groups of stormtroopers. I do, however, have a complaint about how the controls are implemented. In having to hold a movement direction in order to initiate a specific saber stroke, you do shuffle to the left when you're swinging left, to the right when you're swinging right, and forward or back when you're swinging up and down. This is far from being game-breaking, and at the time the game was released was still leaps and bounds ahead of the glowing baseball bat feel of the original Jedi Knight, but it makes me sad to think that if the series did continue past the next sequel, Jedi Academy, it would have developed into a completely flawless lightsaber combat system. Particularly considering that in recent years, games like Vermintide and Shadow Warrior 2 have been doing some great things with precise sword combat. That being said, it can't be denied that the lightsaber combat was very fresh for the time, and it would be hard to argue that any game since has created such an authentic feeling simulation of lightsaber combat. You also have access to force powers, which organically increase in power over the course of the game, and it's here that the game falls a bit flat as a Jedi simulator. Force speed and force jump feel awesome, but nearly every other power feels a tad anemic. Maybe it's primarily because I just finished the Force Unleashed games, but I really don't think it's possible to get through even one of the easier levels using Force powers exclusively. Though like Force Unleashed, you're not penalized for using Force Choke or Force Lightning. There's only one ending, so no need to alter your playstyle in order to manage a morality stat. That being said, Force Heal is invaluable, and using Force powers like Push and Speed can definitely give you an edge during the numerous lightsaber battles in the game. Particularly against the armored shadow troopers who will have you spamming your quick save buttons before and after you face them. Speaking of quick saving, get accustomed to doing that often. I played on Jedi Knight difficulty and probably saved my game 10 billion times over the course of my 15-hour playthrough. Jedi Outcast difficulty is definitely from a different era, and while there are checkpoints, they are so far apart that they might as well not exist. This is a common practice for PC shooter games, and I tackle this issue more directly in my review of indie shooter DUSK on my own channel. which you should definitely subscribe to. But in short, it's up to you to create your own saves. While that does take some of the sting out of the game's significant challenge, you've also got to remember to do it, or you'll end up having to get through a difficult battle more than once if you forgot to save and an enemy got the better of you while you were weak. In addition to the save system, the other aspect of this game which may feel dated to some is the level design. There are no waypoint markers in the game, and sometimes it will feel like you're trapped or lost when the solution to your problem is to find a random vent, destroy it, and crawl through it. Organic signposting and level design has certainly gotten better than it was in 2002. Unlike the first two games in the Dark Forces series, which were running on in-house LucasArts engines, Jedi Outcast used the QUAKE 3 engine, idTech 3, which for the time made some stunning first-person shooters, and Jedi Outcast is no exception. Though if we're being honest, the facial animations during the cutscenes leave a lot to be desired. Even if acting-wise, they're actually a bit of a step up from the live-action cutscenes in the previous game. While I never locked down a flawless solution to mod the game for modern displays, I did eventually get the game running in 1440p ultra-wide with an unlocked frame rate, but I had to cope with the cutscene aspect ratio being pushed in a tad too far. I'll still link some mod tutorials in the description, but luckily if you're watching this for the Switch or PS4 version, you probably won't have to deal with any nerdy PC gamer tweaking. Here's hoping the new release also provides the PC versions with modern compatibility patches though. I was thrilled to hear about Jedi Outcast getting a modern re-release, and I hope this is a sign of things to come for the classic Star Wars games. A big reason I started this video series is to make younger Star Wars fans aware of the awesome games the franchise has produced over the years, and while I'm comfortable diving into the code and modifying settings or applying user-made patches to get a game running on par with modern titles,
Nerd alert!
I know that can be a bit intimidating for some, and official patches and remasters will prevent that type of hacking from being necessary. Whichever platform you decide to play on, be it Switch, PS4, Steam, or my platform of choice, CD Projekt's Good Old Games, I hope you take the time to play one of the greatest lightsaber combat games ever made, Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast.
Hey everyone, it's Jeremy from geeksandgamers.com, and if you're a fan of Geeks and Gamers, please go to our website, visit our merchandise store. We have t-shirts, hoodies, hats, beanies, tank tops, and in the very near future, we're going to have many more products for you to choose from. So thank you for the support. We appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we will talk to you later.